people the information, where they can actually learn the information, make new connections in their brain. That's what learning is. Repeat what they've learned to the person next to them, build a model of understanding so you can remember it. Remind yourself what you've learned, because it's so much easier to forget this information than to remember it. So create a new level of mind, take away all the doubt, the conjecture, the superstition, the dogma, and so that the person can actually understand what they're doing and why they're doing. So the how gets easier. And when the how gets easier, we assign meaning to the act because we understand what we're doing. And when we do that, we want a greater outcome. So I want to give people the information. And I looked at all the latest research that pointed the finger at human potential and human possibility. I had my own personal experience with a personal injury. We talked about it last time. I studied spontaneous remissions. I wanted to see what people had in common with each other. And I couldn't find the explanation pretty much in contemporary texts. I had to start looking at neuroplasticity and epigenetics. And then I wanted to see, well, now that I know what people did and I understood what they did to have their own personal healings and transformation, could I reproduce the effects? Knowing what they did, finding out what the commonalities were, putting it in the language of science and then teaching it to people. They could be sick or they could be well, it wouldn't matter. But understand what they did in order for them to change and have their life change. And after a couple years of teaching it, we started to see kind of the same type of effects in those people that were applying and doing something with it. So this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. So when we started seeing people stepping out of wheelchairs and having dramatic changes in their health, I knew that in some moment during the retreat or during their meditation, that something happened to them. They had an experience inwardly that must have changed them biologically. In other words, if you come into an event and you have 3 days to be together, and at the end of 3 days you're no longer in your wheelchair and you no longer have symptoms of MS, that, the human being in me said, wow, that's amazing. The scientist in me said, how? Like, how did that happen? So that's when we started doing our own independent research. And that's when I started calling in neuroscientists and, biologists and quantum physicists and really scientists measuring heart rate variability to look to see what